Welcome back to the Strong After 50 podcast, episode 29. Apologies for last week. I didn't get an episode out. I did begin to record last Sunday and got so distracted multiple times through the podcast and basically gave up in the end. Phone rang, something else happened, and I've got to get better at locking myself away for an hour or two and doing my podcast prep and getting this out. But so I do apologise there, but we're back. I have Chris lined up on Tuesday this week, Chris Devon, who is on once a month, so that'll be good to chat to Chris. We haven't got any particular topic signed up, but he always brings good info because of his background knowledge and his current training of the over 50 demographic. Does online training, and he has a studio based in the UK. Quick shout out to subscribers this week, still going great guns. We did go through the 40,000 subscribers, so that's absolutely amazing and more than I could ever have hoped or dreamed of, that we'd get to 40,000 subscribers so quickly. To be honest, I've set myself a couple of big targets now. The next one is to get to 50,000, then we will hopefully reach that 100,000 subscribers by the end of this year. So fingers crossed, we'll see how we go. I'm going to make this very, very short and sweet today. I'm hoping to go for only about 10 minutes. And I want to talk about two things. One is wearables. Just a study that I read during the week. Just want to quickly touch on the wearables, the best wearables for the particular task at hand. I do use a wearable, and I'll go through that in a little bit more detail. And the second thing I want to touch on is injury recovery and rehab, how to go about rehabbing some of these things, what to do pre-surgery and when surgery is necessary. It's a little bit inspired by a question I got online with somebody that has been advised by their orthopedic surgeon to have either knee surgery or knee replacement. I'm not a doctor. I have had a few injuries over the years, so I know a little bit about this stuff, and just I'll explain how I go about some of my injuries and what I do to rehab and the people I use for particular tasks at hand. But first and foremost, let's just chat about wearables. A study came out the other week comparing all the wearables, and it was, across 3 or 4 different areas. And I believe that Google, which I do recall, but they did buy Fitbit a couple of years ago, and they've come out with a new platform or home for Fitbit, and they've got the Fitbit Air or something, I believe now. But there's a new online platform where you can actually house all your data, Google Health data. I haven't used it, so I can't really speak to it. I haven't actually played around with it, even the dashboard, a lot to see what's going on in there, but they are going down the wearable path, and this new wearable has no screen. It seems to be they're becoming quite popular at the moment, these wearables that don't have a screen, so it stores all the data in the cloud, and obviously Whoop do that as well. But from the sleep point of view, it's basically, well, they're saying in this particular study that Whoop was the best sleep monitor. I have read another study where it was Oura Ring, and then Whoop apparently challenged the findings of the study and the way they were actually conducting the study, and the way that Oura looks at their sleep metrics. You have to go and do your own research on these and which one's the best. We're always going to be coming at these things from a marketing angle, right? It's a massive market. These guys are making tons of money now in terms of, you're paying for the actual hardware, then you're paying an ongoing subscription for these particular products. I got in early with the Oura Ring and basically got the free subscription. I think it's lifetime for memory on the Oura 2 or Oura 3 ring. Must be an Oura 2 because I've had 2 of them now. And funny enough, I can't get it to fire back up. I haven't worn it for some time, and I just thought I'd try and check it against my Garmin watch just to see the different sleep metrics. I do believe that Oura tracks your sleep, your deep sleep in particular, a little bit differently. But I'd like just to compare to my Garmin watch. I just use a Garmin watch. I don't use an Oura Ring anymore. I got a little bit tired of taking it on and off because I couldn't train in it. It does annoy me during the day. I don't wear a ring at all. And then every time I'd go to the gym, I would take it off to train with weights because I couldn't grip anything. And I left it at the gym a couple of times, so I basically gave up in the end and decided not to wear it anymore at all. And I think with a lot of these things, once you get a bit of an idea of where your sleep is at and how that's tracking, then do you really need them? Possibly not. And I think the other problem is that a lot of people who are a little bit obsessed become obsessed with them and then start to actually imagine how bad they feel because they haven't had good sleep that night. They wake up first thing in the morning, check their data, and it's like, oh, I've had terrible sleep, I'm going to have a horrible day. And I definitely know that can be the case. Days when I do get up and I feel absolutely amazing and recharged, and I look at my Garmin data and I've had 6 hours sleep and I should feel like crap. And then the other night I had 7.5 hours sleep and I woke up feeling like crap. So it's a little bit hit and miss there. I will touch on one thing, and I'll come back to that in a moment, about sleep that I did have the other night, and just off one glass of wine, red wine, what it did to my sleep. So the Whoop and the Oura Ring appear to, in the studies I have read, they're pretty much tied for the best sleep monitors or trackers. The best VO2 max monitor is the Garmin Fenix 6. That doesn't surprise me. I think the Garmin watches do a very good job for the participation of sports. I use a Garmin Forerunner 265. I think I did buy it because it's got the music built into it, although I don't use that function as much as I used to. One, I'm not running as fast, so I can take a phone with me. It doesn't bounce around as much when I'm not doing my fast intervals. I'm just running slow. But I predominantly use a Garmin watch because I like to see the speed. And when I'm running my intervals, I can set it up so it will, give me an alarm in my ears if I've got headphones in or earpods in at when I'm doing 400 or 800 meter intervals. So I do find that very beneficial. And the third one was the best step counter, was the Apple Watch Ultra. I'm not too sure that's a great prize to win, that it's the most accurate step counter. You wouldn't want to be paying whatever they are. I think Apple Watch in Australia, the Apple Watch Ultra is about $2,000. You wouldn't want to be paying $2,000 just to track your steps. I think that's a little bit overboard, but I decided, just for my own personal view, I'm an Apple person. I do have an Apple computer, an Apple phone, but I decided against the Apple Watch, although I was going to get one. Actually, my ex-partner was going to buy me one, and I didn't like the programming for running on there. She had not the Ultra, but just an Apple Watch, and I found it quite difficult to set it up for intervals. And I found the Garmin so much easier. I had an older Garmin, so I've stuck to the Garmin. I'd be interested to actually have another go at the Apple Watch and see what it's like. But basically, yeah, it'd be interesting I'd also like to, and if you've got a Fenix 6 and you've used it for VO2 max and had a VO2 max test, I'd like to hear what you think, how accurate it was against your test. How many points out were you? If you've registered a VO2 max of 50 or whatever it may be, where is your watch sitting? Is it over or under? Is it overestimating or underestimating? So, yeah, interesting. Do your own homework on that sort of stuff. I don't think it's absolutely necessary, but they are good for running in particular, to track your pace when you're running and your intervals and so forth. I just quickly touch on one thing which I read the other day, and I want to speak to Chris more about this because he's got some good views around this, but it's about health span and lifespan. And apparently the average American lifespan at the moment is 79 years of age, but the health span is only 67. Basically meaning that gap is that when illness starts to kick in and chronic disease, and we go on more medications and pain and so forth. So we're getting to 67 years of age, living for another 12 years. But that second 12 years is not so great in our life. Basically, it's all downhill. And I think that's the part we need to improve. I personally don't see the point in getting to a certain point in your life and, still being around, but not being able to function at your max. And Chris has come up with his own concept saying your performance span as well. And again, looking at what Chris is basically saying, it's you've got your health span, your lifespan, and your performance span. Well, you want to be performing really well in all aspects of your life, go hiking, walking, still be able to go to the gym and travel and so forth, right up until your very latter years. So yeah, we'll talk more about that. That'll come out next week, that podcast, but we'll be podcasting during this week. The thing I wanted to touch on today was, I'll just come back to my sleep the other night. I virtually stopped drinking. I might have one glass of wine. It wouldn't even be weekly. It might be every couple of weeks. I used to be predominantly a red wine drinker. I haven't had red wine for absolute months. During the summer months of Australia, I'd have a glass of, Chardonnay, rosé, or I'm really more of a French or Italian wine drinker. And I had a mate up from Adelaide the other day, and we went out for dinner and we had a glass of red wine. And it was a little bit later. Normally I do eat quite early so I can actually digest food and get into bed quite early. And just that one glass of red wine, my heart rate was 4 to 5 beats higher overnight. I wake up hot during the night, and my HRV was trashed. It was probably about 10 points lower than it normally would be, and my sleep was trashed, even though I went to bed at a relatively good time, but I just tossed and turned all night. So it's amazing when you actually cut out and your resilience to the red wine actually drops, that you don't metabolize it, and how bad it was in my sleep. So just something to keep in mind. I'm not saying that everybody needs to make up their own mind and that sort of stuff. I still have always said that I won't stop drinking 100%. I would still enjoy a nice glass of wine when I'm out with friends, but that kind of deterred me from drinking red wine, particularly in the evenings altogether. Dries, rehab. So I had a question online today within the chat about, do I have any points or feedback on rehabbing knees? His surgeon suggesting that he should have knee surgery. His orthopedic surgeon, each time he goes to speak to him about knee pain. It's an interesting one, and I don't know what the severity of his knee condition is. However, I do know from past experience, what I have done myself is I'll just go wind up a little bit. Many years ago, rest was a big thing all the time. You go and see your physical therapist or your doctor. And in my case, my local general practitioner who has been looking after my health for a very long time, and I ran track. Every time I would go to him for just a basic injury, the first thing he would say to me, you need to stop. You're getting too old to be doing this. You shouldn't be doing this to your body. And he would ask me to stop. I'd go off and I also had a sports physician. I'd go off and see my sports physician, who was a high-level practitioner here in Australia, looked after the Australian rugby club, rugby side, and also one of the national teams. And she would say to me straight away, okay, how do we work around this? You need to do this, you need to do that. And she'd always send me off to another specialist, even right down to a physical therapist. I had a physical therapist and she would say, no, this guy's really good for these type of injuries. And that's kind of my point here. And that's what I was suggesting to this gentleman that asked me this question today, that you need to find a specialist in that area. Now, for a knee injury, me personally, I would actually go and find somebody that actually works with a lot of contact sport athletes and basketballers in Australia, netball players. They suffer a lot of knee injuries. AFL football, the rugby players. Go and find somebody that's used to dealing with these. Not taking anything away from physical therapists here, but not just a physical therapist that's just working with the everyday client. I think some of these practitioners don't see, enough knee injuries throughout their career. But if you get these specialist guys that are seeing just knee injuries all the time, I think they would do a really good job of getting you back on track. And it's the same with actually having the surgery. And there's and I've always said this as well, like every professional out there, there's people that are just better at their job. I had a shoulder injury many years ago, just an impingement in my shoulder. I used to bench press really heavy all the time and it would always flare up. I played Aussie rules football, so had been knocked around a little bit and my shoulder was just impinging really well. Here I am as a track athlete and I had shoulder pain just from weight training. So I went off to see a surgeon and the first thing he said to me, MRI, the diagnosis was there was 3 or 4 different pathologies in there. There was a small tear in the shoulder, some calcification, some arthritis, some inflammation, blah, 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 blah. And it was great advice. He said to me, Rod, I can actually do surgery on your shoulder, but there's a 50-50 chance that your pain will actually go away. He said, my suggestion would be, and his words were, I'll take your money. He said, but it's probably not going to do. We've got such a low probability of it correcting the problem. He said, I would suggest you go away and do rehab for 6 months. If you've still got more than, if the pain is still above a 5 or a 6 and it's still impinging, then come back and we'll reassess. I found a good physical therapist. They implemented a very good shoulder plan. I stopped bench pressing. I did a lot of low-grade rehab stuff, strengthened my shoulders, strengthened all the muscles around the shoulder again. All those you don't need to train the bigger muscles. It's all those small stabilizing muscles. And within 6 months or 12 months, I was back to bench pressing, my maximum weight again and basically had 95% of the movement back in the shoulder. So sometimes, we can go off and rehab these things and get a very, very good result. And I'll give you another example. My Achilles tendon at the moment, I've got an Achilles problem, which I've mentioned a few times. From after a bit of a rest I had after high rocks, I went and ran some aggressive hills. It's flared my Achilles up and it has hung around. I'll be honest. It's been around for 3 or 4 months now. I can still run. I ran 5 kilometers today, 25 minutes, really, really nice run today. And I felt really good. I could have actually gone a bit faster, but I just feel like it's kind of stagnated a little bit recently. I went to my physio, who is a running physio, extremely good. He runs ultras. And I said to him, I just feel like I can't get to that next level. And he said, we need to start doing some small plyometric work, which I've been doing, double leg pogo jumps, feet together, just bouncing on your toes. And he said, can you do single legs? And I said, well, when I do single leg, I feel like I collapse. And I said, it just seems to be too much, that step up. And this is where a good physio and the progression comes into it. It's exactly like normal weight training and any type of training. You need this progressive plan. And I'm pretty good at actually working out most things because I've been involved in this space for a long time. But that progression to go from 2-leg pogo to 1-leg was just a little bit too much. I needed something in between. And he said to me, just put 1 foot up on a chair just to take half the load off that lower leg on the ground and then just bounce on that foot. Perfect. Straight away, I could actually do the 1-legged pogo just on the 1 foot, but I've got 1 foot up on a chair, just taking a little bit of stress off it. I've done then the last couple of days now, and my Achilles is improving already. It's already starting to get that bit of spring back. So it's that classic case going from 2-leg to 1-leg. There's too big a jump. You need to find that progression in between. And that's where a good physio that have actually just working with a specific demographic, and in the case of the physical therapist I use, they just work with runners. He just knew what that progression was, and it was a simple fix and off you go. So I highly encourage people to find the right physio for the right injury. And if that means using a few different people for different injuries, I'd highly recommend it because it's worth its weight. And by the way, that takes a bit of time. I've actually spent so much time going through different physios over the years. So that can actually take a little bit of time, and it can become a little bit costly, particularly as I know in the US. So yeah, I just wanted to let people know, I think rehab is always the best way to go first. Find the right person, do that progressive rehab before you go under the knife. I have had shoulder surgery. I won't bore you with the details, but it was at the point where I did say to my surgeon, could I go off and rehab this because of what I've been able to achieve in the past? And he said to me, no way. He said, the tear is so bad in there. You've got a tear in your bicep and tendon as well. He said, this is just not fixing itself, and less so at your age now. So I did go off and actually have that repaired. But then I actually, jumped into physical therapy straight away. So that's it, short and sweet. I've gone a bit longer than I thought, 18 or 15 or 18 minutes, thereabouts. That's going to be it. Chris is, as I said, he'll be on for next week. And hope everyone has a great week, and bye for now.